Hello there, good evening, and welcome to another edition of Viewpoint. We're having a series of discussions on corruption, of course, in the APNU AFC government. We have dealt with the state media where there's extremely high levels of corruption. We have examined also the issue involving the feasibility studies for the new Demerara Harbour Bridge, and of course, those studies would have led to some inclination for criminal charges and so forth. We're going to continue. This is our third installment of the program Corruption in Government, and joining me today is a longtime friend, of course, a member of Parliament and an executive member of the People's Progressive Party, Nigel Dharamlal. Nigel, welcome to the program.
Right, thank you, Eddie, and thanks for having me. And I'd like to wish all of our viewers and the rest of our Guyanese people a Happy New Year. And as you're aware, the PPP is in full campaign mode to retake government, and we feel that one of the major issues that has brought us so close to an election is the whole issue of corruption in government. And we are happy to share with our viewers what is currently taking place in our country.
Yes, I want to, before I get into the questions or the chit-chat with you, Nigel, I want to put this into context. Most Guyanese are aware that under the People's Progressive Party civic government, expansion of the Chedijalan International Airport was initiated. Those of you who are aware of the magnitude of those works and the modern state in which it would have brought the airport, you would understand how important that expansion was in terms of making Guyana indeed a hub, a travel hub in the region. And because of our positioning, we are such an important link to Latin America, to South America, and that project is continuing. However, there are some serious issues in terms of the specifications and the spending of the monies that were highlighted, that were earmarked for that. Nigel, let us talk a little bit about what the PPP had as the project and what the project turned out to be when the APNU got into power.
Yeah, well, I think we need to backtrack a little. This project, the CGI expansion, or modernization and expansion, happened in a greater vision for Guyana. At that time, we were focused on enhancing our infrastructure in our country. So the airport expansion was one. We were also focusing on the Amila Hydro to produce and provide cheaper electricity to all our Guyanese people, affordable electricity, competitive electricity. We were also thinking of constructing a deep water harbor. We were thinking of surfacing the Latham to George Linden Road with the help of the Brazilian government. We were also thinking of, there was a pre-feasibility done on the Upper Mazaruni Hydro. Those were things that were taken in the bigger context. And the CGIA, whilst we were doing all of these other things, diversifying the economy, creating a stronger base for what we now have, including we never had a 5-star hotel in our country too. So the Marriott was constructed as well. And as you're aware, everyone now goes to the Marriott, including the same government that used to criticize it. I've passed through the cafe a few times, and you always see high officials of the government here. But specific to the CGIA, when the contract was first signed, we had signed it for a practically new airport, a modern airport. The scope of works then included work on the runway, included a two-tier terminal building, a two-story terminal building, 8 bridges. That is a walkway from the terminal into the aircraft. We had also envisaged, or in the scope, in the contract, we had an expanded and enhanced car park. So those things were all part of the contract. What we have witnessed over the last 3 years of this government, it's almost 4 years now, is some damning revelations in terms of what is happening at CGIA, in terms of the quality of work, in terms of the scope of the work, in terms of the expenditure on the budget of the CGIA contract. What we found now is that we have a refurbished airport, and parts of it are already falling apart. We have, instead of 8 bridges, we now have 2 bridges. We have an extended runway that is still creating problems in terms of the foundation and the structural works of it. We have refurbishment instead of new modern construction. We have a lot of stalling in terms of other parts of the contract. We have cases where the Minister of Government, I sit also in the Public Accounts Committee of the Parliament, and we have cases where the Minister of Government responsible for the airport would go to Parliament and make commitments that the airport would have been finished 2 years ago. Last year, the airport was supposed to finish in 2018 as well. The airport is still not finished. And naturally, there will be cost overruns on the contract, and the Guyanese taxpayers are going to be the ones with that burden. For me, and I think it is clear for all to see, that this airport contract is faced with massive corruption. It is faced with on-the-hand endeavors of high officials of the government. I don't want to say directly the minister, but we have had cause to bring matters before in the parliament, even to go to SOCO with respect to this minister. And we feel that all of the changes in the scope of work, in terms of from modern new to refurbished, in terms of contracting things from bigger to smaller, from new stuff to reused stuff, naturally, and the price has not changed.
Well, that was the point I wanted to raise.
It means that money is being spent, and someone is earning the money. The contractors, when we spoke to the contractors, they claim they're losing, but money is being paid. So it means that someone is earning. And if we were to take you back just 2 years ago, Eddy, you would know that they had this, these issues in the media, in mainstream as well as other media, that officials of the government, people are making reports that bank accounts are established in Macau and Cayman Islands and Curacao, and naturally money is being siphoned off from these contracts. And this airport, I think a lot of money is being siphoned off.
And if you could put this in context for just for you to have an understanding, I mean, think about it yourself. You're building your house,
right.
And you say, okay, I'm going to build a 25 by 40. That's the size of the house. And you get an estimate. The contractor says $5 million to build this house. If you change that to 18 by 30, and you're not going to use new materials in all instances, you're going to buy, replace with used stuff and so on. Naturally, you're going to do that because your intention is to save some money, to cut back on some money. So you're trying to cut back on that $5 million, probably hoping to spend $3 million. The situation we have at the CGIA is that the same amount of money is being spent. Instead of a 2-story terminal, what you're getting is a refurbished repairs to the existing flat terminal is there. 8 air bridges. It came down to 2, and I can tell you this because the minister and all of them would have refused to answer this question. That even though they came down to 2 air bridges, probably would have expected them to make it a bit bigger so that it can accommodate larger planes. The aircraft that was being used by Fly Jamaica can't go there. People are still coming off on the tarmac. Matter of fact, Bishop Eddy came in once and he had to come off on the tarmac. So it's a case where the work is really less, but the money is the same. And I understand probably there is more being spent. Had it not been for the no confidence motion, the government being knocked out of office, probably would have seen supplementary budgets coming for more money for the same project that is smaller. But how do we address this? As a country, as a people, and as you guys as politicians, how do you intend to address this?
Well, I think even beyond me being a politician, I think it has to do with being ethical, and this is the taxpayers, our children, and their children will have to pay these things back. And for one, in terms of us moving forward, we expect that condign action will be taken against those who are involved in corruption. We genuinely believe so, and I think everyone in this country believes and would like to see that happen. We have made overtures to SOCU. SOCU is one of those branches of the state, run by politicians more than the police force, and to lay charges on ministers of government on many matters of corruption. And in this particular case, the minister responsible for CGI is one of the ministers who has his hand, or their hand, in major projects of this country. And we have similar types of problems where there are huge cost overruns running into the hundreds of millions of dollars that taxpayers will have to repay. And then that the economy is not, is not vibrant, so we're not earning foreign exchange, we're not even getting good value for money in terms of the productive sectors. So how are we going to be paying for all of these? Naturally, this government is going to leave us with huge debts. Our position to the donors, as well as even big contractors, that we are insisting that disbursements are not being provided to the government on these major investments, that contractors do not sign contracts that are going to cause us to have to relook at them, because we feel that the CGIA, like other projects, hundreds of millions are being siphoned off, and they're not siphoned off for the greater good of this country, but for ministers of government and high officials of the government.
The thing is, Nigel, when you look at it, these kind of problems are not unique to one particular ministry or one particular sector, because you can look across the board in the ministry. Well, this particular ministry, a lot of issues, because only the other day we spoke about the Demerara Harbour Bridge,
yes,
and requesting another $100 million, unsolicited bids, minister taking that to cabinet and without involving the National Tender Board, without involving the Public Procurement Commission, and so forth. Matter of fact, the report from the Public Procurement Commission would have spoken directly about all the breaches and so forth. But this is something that you're seeing across ministries. You're seeing this in the state media. We had discussions of that, where executives of the party are being hired as contracted and their entire family are employed.
And I paid $750,000+ a month. I mean, it's not easy money that our taxes are being used to pay. Right?
People would want to call this, I personally would want to call this, probably institutionalized corruption, where they try to hire the person, pay them a large sum of money as though it's a legal procedure. But that is what is happening. We've seen what is happening in the Ministry of Health, the drug bond, and so many other things. And I think Guyanese need to understand this. They need to understand that this government is putting us in a situation where if you're a young person, your children, your grandchildren, will have to pay back these monies. And these are monies that you're not really benefiting from.
Well, Eddy, the government has a peculiar way of doing business. They spend, they borrow, and they tax. So the little that we have, they spend it out on trivial things, including personal travel. I got a call from one of my friends in Aishalton last evening, and I was told that 36 members of the government are headed to Aishalton on Saturday.
For what?
Exactly. 36, that is the last time they were there, I think it was 6 aircrafts they went in with. So things are, the food bill of the government, as you're aware, has risen by over $1 billion. The security bill, the traveling bill has also increased. It is now legendary, the corruption that takes place in this government. And it is unfortunate, because I think that is one of the sores of our country. And it is something that this government is festering across all levels right now. From the ministers across all ministries practically are involved in some way. They have their hand in the kitty. They may not physically go and take it out, but the decisions that they make are in their self-interest rather than the interest of the projects and of the people of this country.
And one must recall the statement made by the Minister of State that, we're increasing ministers' salaries so that, they earn a wage that they won't have to steal and public officials won't have to steal and so on. But with that being said, you're still seeing cases, so many questionable cases. And this is one of the key factors that more or less inspired the no confidence motion. Because when one look at it, 3.5 years, billions of dollars already siphoned off through corruption in contracts and so forth. You're gonna wait for another 1.5 years?
We have what is it, 4 budgets so far?
4.
Over $1 trillion in budget. So I would like to ask the Guyanese people. This government, the AP and UAFC, they have spent over $1 trillion since they've been in government. Tell me where you have seen them spend it. We have lost jobs. 30,000 plus people are out of jobs. Tens of thousands of young people are leaving school and high school and technical college, vocational schools, the technical college, GTI, the University of Guyana, some of them studying privately and cannot find jobs. We have the classic case of the chairman of the PNC claiming that the only way you're going to get a job is to bear a PNC card. But that is not a matter for us to discuss today. That takes a topic by itself. But going back to the whole issue of corruption, the fact that so much money is being spent and we're not getting value for money and we're not actually seeing the tangible benefits of over $1 trillion being spent, but the money is being spent. The country needs to ask the question, where is our money?
And I hope the argument wouldn't be, we're building the East Bank and East Coast 4-lane road. Those are contracts that were signed.
Those are contracts that have been signed since I think 2011, between 2011 and 2015. So as a matter of fact, the government hasn't really brought anything new since they have.
There's nothing.
Except
nothing.
that they have taken corruption to levels that are unprecedented, and I think corruption is now legendary in our country. Similar to when the previous the PNC was in government. I don't like to go back to history, but history sometimes is important for us to understand the context of where we are. Many of the people who are in government now and leaders of the government had a terrible, sordid history in terms of how they managed this country, and they came on a platform to undo many of the things that people in the country thought that were going wrong. But what they have done is as I said in Parliament in my budget speech, that this government is running the country in a dark tunnel without any lights on.
The thing is, for the first time, I think it was last year, Guyana, by an international agency, an international agency recognizing, saying that the high level of government corruption is fueling money laundering and so on. So that's the first time in the history. So this is not something that the PPP wants to talk about to just score political points. The evidence is there. The evidence is there. We're seeing contracts that we know can cost less.
And that report when it came out, there's a lot that you can read in between the lines. When they say government is so highly involved in corruption and money laundering, they're basically saying to you that people are making money in the high levels of the government and they're using it. They're turning it over in some devious criminal way and procuring things criminally as well. So, and like you said, when we decided on the vote of no confidence, we thought that the economy is in tatters. Corruption is at unprecedented levels, like I said. Unemployment, those are things which, the extravagance of the government, the way they live, the way they travel, ministers of government from being paupers to $500,000 per month minimum rental for a home in Guyana, in a country that is cash strapped. When we left government, we left with it close to 1.2 billion US, 700 million in the treasury system, 300 million US in the commercial accounts of the country, and 150 million US plus in liquidity in the ministries and the agencies of the government. This government now, the last report we read last year, our debt is nearly 1.8 billion US dollars, right? So 450 million US in the domestic debt and over 1.2 billion in foreign debt. In just a matter of
and the flagship, the flagship project that is the major achievement for this government that they keep talking about over and over and over. Matter of fact, I think some ministers use that as the most transformational project under this government is the white elephant up the road there, Durban Park. But that there's so many corrupt transactions. Do you hear about that itself?
Yeah, even the company that they established a private company, claiming that this private company ran the construction of and management of Durban Park, HDI, I think it was. Spare my memory on it. But over $1 billion so far have been spent on Durban Park, taxpayers' money.
But before we go on, Nigel, what has to happen is that we have to go back to the beginning of this. It was said that this project will be done by donations, exactly, contributions from people. Then subsequently you're hearing,
Yeah, and every year, even in the 2019 budget, when we discussed it in Parliament, I think it is about $300 million more. And what they have stealthily did was to inveigle into different ministries and put monies in different ministries to complement the budget for Durban Park. I think now previously it was under the Ministry of Public Infrastructure, now it is under the Ministry of Social Cohesion.
But that's the problem. And if one is to look at the budgets, it's simple. You look at the figures, look at the increases over the years, and ask yourself, choose any ministry, look at the increases in terms of their budgetary allocations, and sit down and ask yourself, okay, they got $2 billion in 2017, they're requesting $3 billion in 2018. Look at it, or in 2019, what have they done with the money that they got? And I can assure you that you're not going to find a single thing, a single substantial project.
Well, there is no new road, there is no new airport, there is no new canal. I run the PPP operations, campaign operations on the Essequibo coast for over the last year. The drains are clogged, the entire agricultural infrastructure has deteriorated, and this goes across the country. You would not find, and they've taken away subsidies given to pensioners, grants given to school children, given to Amerindian people. They have stopped even the Amerindian land titling program. Things that are meaningful to the livelihood of people. This government is not focused on that. So, and that is why I told you earlier that they spend, they borrow, they tax, and that is why we find ourselves in this predicament. That even though they said they were going to reduce VAT from 16 to 14%, they have expanded the VAT base, and they've also created the facade of the zero list, moving from the zero list to the exempt list. But in fact, when you go on the exempt list, you still have to pay input VAT. So, say for example, this shirt that you're wearing, everything that the manufacturer, the person who sews your shirt, they bring it from overseas, they have to pay VAT on the needle, the thread, the buttons, the cloth. They have to pay VAT on that. Mm-hmm. But when it is on the exempt list, you can't reclaim that VAT. If it was on the zero rated list, you could have reclaimed the VAT. So that is why you find prices are also increasing. But they have this campaign propaganda that they have reduced VAT from 14 to 16%. As a matter of fact, they've collected, I think now nearly $130-something billion
in taxes on taxes. And that's the thing. The thing is, monies are being spent, like you said, $3 trillion. But we ain't seeing nothing, if you could put it in the simplest possible term, for the people of Guyana. That is why it's important, And I always use this opportunity, Nigel, to talk to especially our younger people. Be wise. You have to study what is happening in your country. Look out, see what is happening around you. You cannot be supporting a government that it's first and foremost promised that they're going to do all of these things for young people, jobs, putting the youths first and all sorts of things. And then when they're done, they cast you aside and they move forward with their own people, old guard. I'm not talking in terms of age, but I'm talking in terms of people,
political history.
And they cast you aside. They're spending billions of dollars, no, trillions of dollars for the state, and you're not seeing anything happening. You're still broke. You're still out of a job. Your roads are still bad. If you go into some of the communities on the East Coast and so forth, you'll be appalled at the state of those communities.
I mean, I have the opportunity of traveling the length and breadth of this country, and which I do on a regular basis. And everyone is crying out. I mean, you might fix a pothole and things may look good for a few days, but people are still hungry. People, they may not be starving, but I've visited families in some communities in our country where mothers were living comfortably, and the fact that their husbands have lost their jobs, they're now cooking 2 meals per day, or if they're cooking 3 meals per day, they're cooking smaller amounts. They can't cook the same things that they were cooking before. So I think for me as a politician, my duty is to ensure that people's lives are improved and enhanced every day, irrespective of whether I'm in government or not. And I would like to encourage people to look at these issues. I mean, irrespective of my demographic characteristics or my geographic location, what is important for us? Security, and security is still uncontrollable in our country. Peace of mind, comfort, good standards of living, reduced cost of living. I'm able to take care of my son like others are able to take care of their children. Good education, and those are things that people are still struggling to achieve and to accomplish in our country.
Because I would want to say over the past probably 3.5 years, we went about 10 years back in terms of, we didn't progress, we regressed. So
yes,
far back.
because because we are actually indebted again, like hugely indebted again. The infrastructure that was supposed to be the launch pad to take us into an oil economy, like reduced cost of electricity. Electricity cuts across every single thing in our country. They flatten the amyla hydro. By now, the cost that we use on fuel import would have already paid back for the construction of the amyla hydro, and we would have been receiving electricity at less than 1/3 of what we're currently paying.
I know we have to wrap things up, but I just want to touch on this quickly, and this ties right into the high level of corruption. Let me say this to you: no matter how much they deny, it is there. The evidence is there. Take, for example, the specialty hospital. Remember that contractor was abandoned and so on. The monies were supposed to be diverted to primary health care in this country. Ask any one of the ministers, probably the Minister of Health, the minister within the Ministry of Health, the Finance Minister, the Minister of State. Ask them
public
what
security too, who was heavily involved in
the federal law, the whole thing. Ask them what have they done for primary health care in this country since that project was cancelled and that those monies were diverted. Ask them what they have done.
As a matter of fact, just to give you a quick example, the specialty hospital was supposed to provide tertiary care to patients. For example, now the state will pay nearly $5,000 in support of someone who has a heart ailment to go and do a surgery overseas. That is the contribution of the state. And then the person themselves would probably have to raise, in addition to that 5,000, maybe nearly 25,000 more to take care of them and their family and so forth, and other incidentals and logistics. At the specialty hospital, it would have been subsidized by the state, and the cost would have been less than $4,000 per surgery. So imagine every patient that needed a heart surgery would have saved in excess of $25,000 or $5 million.
Yes, because what happened? These guys, and I sympathize. I try to support them whenever they come around. The state of the economy, people don't have money. They gotta go around. They're begging, to get a little bit of money from everybody.
Well, the biggest enterprise now. I don't want to sound cynical, or I don't want to make a joke of it, but every single corner in Georgetown there's a dog food stand.
That
is, and I mean, what ambition are you giving to our young people in our country when a young person, whether they finish school or not, there must be space for everyone to get a job. And I think that is what is primary for us. Everyone, and that is the dream of the PPP, to ensure that every single person who needs a job has to have a job. That underemployment must also be treated with. Unemployment, like I said, has to be treated with, so that, you know, money is flowing in families and in communities and in villages and in neighborhoods in our country.
All right, this is where we're going to wrap things up. We want to say, Nigel, I'll probably give you a minute or so to wrap things up in terms of, and of course, we're talking about high levels of corruption in the government. I'm going to give you a minute or so.
Yeah, thank you. And well, I'd like to commend to the people of Guyana that the People's Progressive Party Civic, we are in our election campaign mode. We'll be reaching out to you. We look forward to your support. We are going to be campaigning on issues that affect you and issues which we feel are germane to your future and which we feel we can contribute to alleviating so that your lives become better. We feel that corruption is one of the sores of our country, and it must be rooted out. It must be cut to manageable levels, if not rooted out. We need to ensure that the incompetence that currently takes place, the extravagance that currently takes place, that those things are things of the past. And so moving towards an election, we do look forward to your support, and you can count on us for a better vision for Guyana, and count on us for better implementation, count on us for a better livelihood.
All right, thanks, Nigel. I just want to say as well, I like talking to our young people because I think they have a great role to play as we move forward as a nation. I want to encourage you, every single young person out there, to read, see what is happening in our country. If you're free to compare. Well, there is nothing much to compare the PPP government as against what is happening. As a matter of fact, the Attorney General during I think it was the no confidence motion or the budget debate said, you know, we have to go back to the PPP days in office because of the fact that we don't have anything to talk about that we would have done, you know, not the exact words, but to that effect. But you have to see, you know, who have Guyana's interest and your interest as young people at heart. We've trained thousands of young doctors in this country, engineers, vets, you know, so many people that we're creating these opportunities for young people. These guys haven't created a single opportunity for a single young person so far.
If you quickly allow me, I recall at the business summit last year, the president himself said that they're rebalancing the economy. But when we were in government, we said the primary sectors of the economy would be agriculture, mining and forestry, ICT, those kinds of things. They're rebalancing. They've destroyed all of those. They're now focused on oil. We have not yet pumped a drop of oil, but we still owe billions of dollars as pre-cost oil to Exxon, and these are things that we have to pay for. They speak so much that oil is going to be the salvation of Guyana, but all the statistics show that only about 1,000 jobs directly are going to be created. We don't have a local content policy. We don't have the sovereign wealth fund established. As a matter of fact, it hasn't been discussed properly with the people of this country. So there is still a lot to be done, and I think this election is going to ensure that things change, and when we get back into government, we will make sure that young people, like myself, for example, I benefited tremendously in terms of education, in terms of job opportunities, in terms of a better standard of living. You know, the housing program, for example. Tens of thousands of people, young professionals.
There.
You know,
housing is a whole different story, Nigel.
You know,
all of these guys. The point I'm making, I want to encourage you, young people, to get on board with us. You know, become a part of the struggle. It's a struggle, by the way,
and
to return Guyana to where it was.
As a matter of fact, the PPP has a wide number of young people with, you know, very intelligent, trained, experienced. And most of those will be, or if not all of them, will be on the campaign and would be in the government. So we would like to, rub shoulders with all of our young
All
people.
of our young people, regardless of your political views, come talk to us, listen to us, and get an understanding of the difference. Which political party really and truly, put the interest of Guyanese and Guyana first. And I can tell you without, any fear of contradiction that it's People's Progressive Party Civic. So in closing, I want to encourage each and every young person, get in contact with us, become a part of this movement to return progress to Guyana. We've had a rough 3.5 to 4 years, where nothing really happened. And we want to return to the days of the PPP when you can see progress in our country, when you as youths can progress as an individual in your community, and we can progress as a country as a whole. So I want to thank you very much for joining us. We can be back here as we continue to discuss the issue of corruption in the government. It's deep-rooted corruption, I can tell you, in this government. Bye for now. Have a good rest of the evening.